the concept of pro-Ukrainian puppet. Guy writes for the Atlantic. His record is that of an apologist for the odious neo-Nazi ideology that currently resides in Kiev. But if they were accurate, I think they should have reflected on the fact that, like Diane, I've been listed on the Center for Countering Disinformation blacklist. We've talked about this before, where I've been called an information terrorist, a Russian propagandist, a war criminal, to say the least. And the number one thing that I was accused of by the Center for Countering Disinformation, they listed three things. Number one was that I dare call this conflict a proxy war between NATO and Russia. Now, the reason why I bring that up, again, because not only to continue to highlight the lack of thoroughness of the Wall Street Journal's reporting, but to point out that the Ukrainian defense minister just the other day came out and said straight up, this is a proxy conflict between NATO and Russia, and Ukraine is providing the bodies, and we need NATO to continue to provide the equipment so we can continue this struggle. I look forward to the updating of the Center for Countering Disinformation's list. I want to see the Ukrainian defense minister right next to me, because we both articulate the same thing. The difference is I called this out accurately back in March. He seems to be a little late to the show.
It's many major publications that are in line with the whole Ukrainian thing that Russia's to blame, and they don't mention anything about NATO, correct?
No, there obviously is a narrative that's being promoted by Ukraine, by the United States, by NATO, by the collective West. And anybody who dares articulate a counter narrative, especially one that's fact-based and based upon solid analytical thinking, they don't want to engage. And I've always talked about the importance. We speak of freedom of speech here in the United States, and I say freedom of speech is great, but unless it's active freedom of speech, what I mean by that is freedom of speech does not mean that everybody agrees on everything. Literally, freedom of speech actually means that people have a right to disagree about anything they want to disagree about. And what transforms freedom of speech from the potential Tower of Babylon, chaos, anarchy, everybody just voicing their own thing, is a process that respects differences and allows them to engage in informed, respectful debate, dialogue, and discussion about these issues, to work out differences, try and come up with a consensus of the facts and the conclusions so that we collectively can move in a direction. Because otherwise, we're sort of stuck in neutral, just spinning our wheels, surrounded, choking in the smoke generated by the tires burning. We need to move forward collectively as a nation if we're going to succeed collectively as a nation. And freedom of speech only works in facilitating this process if we engage in it responsibly. Debate, dialogue, and discussion. I'm somebody who says the Wall Street Journal can say whatever they want. That's freedom of speech. That's the beauty of it. Please stake out your position as you did, but don't then dismiss people who have a different take. And you dismiss them in the most embarrassing ways. Not embarrassing for me. They tried to make it embarrassing for me, but it's embarrassing for them to say that I am a disgraced, embittered former. Well, you know what? They cite my former experience as a weapons inspector in Iraq. Hey, newsflash, Wall Street Journal. I got it right. You got it wrong. Who's disgraced? It ain't me. And if you want to bring up my criminal past, is that what you want to bring up? It doesn't work, guys. You're wasting your time. I've already addressed this issue. I think I've addressed it with you. I've addressed it with everybody. And I've made it clear. I ain't guilty of what I was charged of. It's part of an effort to silence me by doing what? Allowing people like the Wall Street Journal to say, he's disgraced, therefore you cannot listen to anything he's saying. See, they don't want people to engage with me because I think they know that I would crush every single one of them, especially the author of this article, in a stand-up debate. I challenge him right now to a debate. I challenge the Wall Street Journal's editorial staff to a debate. I challenge anybody affiliated with the Wall Street Journal to a debate about Ukraine, about what's happening, about the history, how we got there, where we're going, what the overall geopolitical ramifications are. They don't want to have that discussion. All they want to do is suppress any voices of dissent so that their narrative can be put forward unchallenged. First of all, in defense of these people, and the system is sort of stacked against you. And you say college educated. I'm a college educated person. And when I went to college, I was a history major where I took a lot of government courses. And I was actively encouraged to subscribe to both the New York Times and the Washington Post, getting that good college discount. And I was told that I can quote either one of these papers as sources in anything I write. They were given that much credence, credibility. And I did so. And so I was trained in college to treat the mainstream media as a reliable source. And when you leave college and you begin to enter into life and you're dealing with the complexities of life, marriage, kids, work, etc., whatever time you can allocate to news, you fall back on established practices, which is to access that which society has told you is reliable. And so right off the bat, when you're somebody like Diane and myself, we're going up against not just the mainstream media, but the American public, who have been programmed to reject outliers and embrace. And to be honest, the only reason why I'm where I'm at today in terms of challenging is because my experience, in my life experience. I mean, during the Gulf War, when I was a weapons inspector in the Soviet Union, a lot of what I saw ran counter to the official narrative, but the official narrative was top secret because it was intelligence assessments of Soviet military. And I was seeing things on the ground in a process that itself was classified. So you couldn't air it. You didn't want to air it. This was an internal discussion in the intelligence community. During the Gulf War, it got a little bit more personal, and because I was charged with hunting down Scuds, Iraqi Scud missiles, and I played a very prominent role in this. And I can tell you right off the bat that we knew at the time we weren't killing any Scuds, either on the ground or shooting them down with the Patriot missile. And yet, if you saw the newspapers, we were shooting them down by the bushel. And if you read the press accounts, we were destroying. I mean, at one point in time in early February, we had destroyed 64 Scuds. The Iraqi Scud launchers. The Iraqis only had 19, and at that time, all 19 were working. So there was something wrong there. So I began to realize at that point in time that there is a disconnect between reality and that narrative, which is being pushed by whom? Who is talking about Patriot kills? Who is talking about Scud kills? It's not the press speculating. Somebody inside the system is feeding them this information for the purpose of shaping a narrative that is 180 degrees distant from the truth. And I realized at that time, wow, I can't trust the New York Times, the Washington Post, or anything, because all they do is parrot. And this even became even more apparent when I became a weapons inspector. I would sit in on Security Council meetings that were about, I don't know, me, that were talking about, I don't know, the inspection I ran, I designed. And I'm not saying this because I'm bragging. I'm saying there was one person in the world who knew everything about the topic the Security Council was discussing, and that was me. And so we were there, we'd have this big meeting, all these diplomats, Lavrov and our guys are asking questions. And all of a sudden you watch the American disappear out the room. And you're going, why is he disappearing in the middle of this thing? And then you see the headline on the New York Times the next day, and it's pure spin. The American spoke, now it was anonymous, so you didn't know it was American, but I knew it was American, who was speaking to the New York Times, who runs a front page story talking about the meeting that I not only was in, but I was the only reason why they were having this meeting about issues that I was intimately involved with. And it's being spun in a way that has nothing to do with the truth. And I called that reporter. I said, what the beep are you doing? And she said, well, first of all, she was shocked because every reporter had been trying to get a hold of me. And my job was not to be interviewed by any of the press. And she said, well, then why didn't you give me an interview? And I said, that's not my job. Your job, though, is if you can't get an interview with me, is not to fabricate stories. Do the research, ask questions, don't write it as if it's fact. You failed your audience. This is not right. Everything you wrote is wrong. Literally everything you wrote in that article is wrong, except the dates, the place and the basic subject that was being talked about. But how you spun that was wrong. This is what's happening today. The mainstream media is 100% addicted to, they are heroin addicts. They are literally heroin addicts. They're dysfunctional. They can't work without the heroin that's provided by the government. The government gives them the heroin. It's called leaked information, not accurate information, leaked information. They stick that stuff in their veins and they get their high and they're able to function somewhat until the next story. And then they're dysfunctional until the government feeds them something new. What they can't do is break free of the heroin and go out and live life the way it's supposed to be lived, with truth, with objectivity, with sound analysis. That would be amazing if the mainstream media did that, but then they wouldn't have access to their dealer. And then they'd go into relapse and it'd all be a problem. And the American people are addicted by association to that same thing. They have a lifestyle where they only have so much time allocated to receiving information. It's too much work to listen to Diane. It's too much work to listen to me. It's too much work to listen to anybody who doesn't package it. Because you see, Cynthia, what you're doing here is helping us package this information. Okay. But it only gets out to a limited number of people. I mean, it's an impressive audience that you have. It really is. You've done an amazing job. But if you look at what you've done and the people you're reaching out to, and then compare it to the impact that mainstream media has, you yourself know that you can't compare the two. We're making inroads, but we don't have the broad spectrum impact that mainstream media does. And so there's people out there right now that I wish they would follow you. I wish they would follow other people. I wish they would listen to Diane, but they don't, because when they come home, they're exhausted. They're working 2 jobs. They got issues with their kids at school. They got issues with healthcare. They got issues with who the heck's going to pay for the food bill this month or the energy bill. And then they finally find that 30-minute window where they say, okay, clear the space, turn on, and they're going to sit there and get their injection of heroin from mainstream media, because that's what they're looking for. They're not looking for the truth. They're looking for a high, the news high that entertains, the news high that keeps them engaged on issues in a way that the government wants them to be engaged on. The last thing the government wants them to do is think. Remember what I said, the thing about American democracy, freedom of speech, informed debate, discussion, and dialogue. Informed is the important thing. The government doesn't want them to be informed, and therefore, by dumbing them down, they don't engage in a debate, discussion, and dialogue, because they've all reached a common consensus about what the narrative is, even though the narrative is 180 degrees wrong.
Well,